In the desert oasis where stories ignite, Skip's little bar, a beacon of light. From the Coachella Valley stars to cool everyday Joes, join Patrick and Randy, let the stories flow. At Big Conversations Little Bar, the magic spreads near and far. Backed by the McCallum Theater's grace, celebrate the voices that shape this place.
From the coveted corner booth in a little bar at the center of the Coachella Valley universe, welcome to another Big Conversation with Patrick Evans and Randy Florence, presented by the McCallum Theater. Visit McCallumTheater.org or reach the box office at 760-340-2787. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Howard, very much. Yes, we are back here at Skip Page's Little Bar in the coveted corner booth. My name is Patrick Evans. This is Big Conversations Little Bar with my co-host, dear friend, and spiritual guru, but non-dietary consultant any longer, Randy Florence. You had biscuits
I
and
had
gravy.
biscuits and gravy for lunch, but that was spiritual.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of.
They are, if they're done right.
Oh, this one was Wilma and Frida's.
Oh,
you
yes.
can't do better than that in this town.
I love Wilma. I can't stand Frida. No, I'm kidding. That's
Except I walked in there singing Yabba Dabba Doo, and
I
thought it was Fred and Wilma's.
Not Fred and Wilma's.
No,
Wilma and,
no. Hey, I want to bring something up.
Uh-oh.
Because this is huge.
Yes. What happened?
Free Spot, is that the name of the website?
Oh, Blogspot, I think.
Blogspot?
Yes.
Well, we're
We
here.
should have done more research
We
on
are
that.
very proudly here to announce we're the #1 podcast in Coachella Valley, and we just passed the Firebirds.
from the Firebirds.
Yeah.
But and I feel badly for the Firebirds. But they've made it to the playoffs 3 times.
But we've lasted longer into this season than they have.
That is true. It's true. I thought third time was going to be a try. Yeah, I really appreciate the Blogspot. They ranked Coachella Valley podcast, and thankfully it wasn't based on listenership. It was based on a number of algorithms, I assume.
Cocktails consumed.
Yeah, you remember Cocktails Consumed? We were #1 a long time ago. But yeah, they named us the podcast of interest.
#1 podcast in the Valley.
And that ranking is only going to be further solidified by our guest today, Del Shores, who really needs zero introduction in the Coachella Valley because your work here resonates so much with the Coachella Valley. And I've had the pleasure of having you on Eye on the Desert a few times. So let's jump right in with Sordid Lives because you're celebrating a big anniversary, 25 years.
25 years. I can't believe it. I was like, the other day, someone asked me, how old were you when it, and I'd already said it's 25 years old. So they're just trying to, I said, look, I'm 67 now and proud of it because I feel very young in Palm Springs in the valley here.
We were born in the same year.
Is that right?
You
57?
and I. Except I wasn't born in Winters, Texas.
Yeah, there were very few of us who were.
I was born in 57.
And you came from a Southern Baptist background.
I did.
I did too, as well.
Did you really?
Yeah, well, it was weird. My mother was Methodist and my father was Catholic, so they settled on Baptist. Very odd. Very odd.
Cuss on this?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say that is fucked up.
It is. It's all kinds of fucked up, frankly.
Why? That'd be like saying, let's be a Mormon.
Yeah.
Well,
we haven't even talked about their Scientology time yet. So.
Well, but we only did that because Tom Cruise is so damned handsome.
Oh.
When he comes to the house, you say, sure, I want to be a Scientologist.
I would.
Yeah. And that's why I actually really... A lot of your work resonates with me because I have since retreated back to the Catholic Church because I felt like as an Italian American, the Southern Baptists really didn't want me.
Congratulations on your new pope.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We like Pope Leo.
Did you have anything to do with
for
that?
a pope, he's kind of sexy.
I
just hope he's
evaluated
hot.
him
That's
that-
what I said. When they were saying it's down to 3, I said, which is, because I always go by not their qualifications. Who is the hottest? That's what I
Well,
want.
he's relatively a young man for the position.
My age,
Yeah.
yes. There you go.
And my wife said to me, she said, he has a really kind face. So I guess that is a sexy quality.
And what gay guy doesn't like 69? That's his
Is he
number.
I think
69 or
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think even the straight people can get into that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's limited. That's
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
I had someone the other day, I was talking about 69, and she said, this woman, she goes, I don't like 69. It's just too much multitasking.
So we went from the Pope.
yeah, we went right to
Well,
I
will bring you into the gutter.
Yeah,
very
one of us
fast.
will be bursting into flames in the next 5 minutes.
the fastest speed at which you can have sex is 68 because at 69 you have to turn around. Wow, that's a
we
new
have-
low.
So, yes, Southern Baptist.
So you grew
My
up
dad
Southern
was
Baptist,
a Southern Baptist
and I,
preacher.
I was in the choir as a Southern Baptist kid, and there's a culture
Yeah.
that permeates that, and it really is interesting to me to look back at some of your work because I see how that influenced you, but it must have been a very different experience.
Well,
Especially in the Deep South.
yeah, I mean, I'm from Texas, and my dad was, my dad was a Southern Baptist preacher. My mom was the high school drama teacher, so I had theatrics on both sides of the family. But honestly, in my writing of Southern Baptist Sissies, and I'm sure you felt this too, there was actually a wonderful community there.
Oh,
In
absolutely.
the church. And I remember when I wrote Mark, which was based on me, and he looked around and he said, I'm leaving the church, but I'm going to miss it. The sweet old ladies, the covered dish fellowships, the hymns. I mean, I still get stoned and go on YouTube and listen to Sandy Patty, and it's just part of the Gaithers.
There is this sense of community and those Sunday potluck dinners after church.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things.
But my brother was talking to me recently. We've gotten very, very close over our disdain for Donald Trump, and
It brings a lot of people together.
Well,
He's united that
I
way.
adore my brother. He was my big brother, but he became a Southern Baptist preacher, and he was a Republican for years. And this really brought us together in an odd way. I always go, if there's anything positive came out of this administration, it was my relationship with my brother. But we were talking, and he said, sometimes when I read your work or where I hear you talking about our childhood, it seems like that you were you had an unhappy childhood, and I don't think we did. And I said, the difference, my brother's name is Dexter, and I said the difference was I heard a different sermon than you did.
Oh.
Because of who I was and who I was hiding. I could not hear what you were hearing, or you didn't hear that because it didn't apply to you. But what I heard growing up in those pews was I was going to hell.
Wow.
So it was it was a different experience, and we did have a wonderful, happy childhood. My parents were amazing, but in that, as Mark said in Southern Baptist Sissies, this is where we learn to hate ourselves.
And when did your parents start to know that this was becoming an issue for you?
Well, they didn't for many years because, I married a woman. I have two daughters. I'm going to be a grandpa, by the way, in like 3 weeks.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
My youngest daughter, Caroline, is pregnant with
Nothing
a baby,
better than grandkids.
baby boy, and we're all excited about that. And I don't regret that the damage that I had, because it gave me these two amazing kids, and it also, damage gave me a career. But
Now, what would you have to write about?
that's right. I mean, except for all the fucked upness of your life. But in that, it was tough for me. And then when I did come out rather late, it was especially hard for my dad and my brother. My mom immediately, because my mom was Luttrell. My mom was going, "Oh, honey, I've been waiting for this your entire life."
She wasn't surprised.
No, wasn't surprised at all. So.
And so how did this, I mean, it seems pretty obvious based on your early writings, but how did this kind of form what you did when you started writing?
Well, early career when I was living a straight life, and I wrote Daddy's Dying, Who's Got the Will, which became a movie. I think how it informed it was that there was a celebration of sorts of the church. I mean, there's always hymns in every piece of work that I've written. There's always the foundation of that religion is there. How it is interpreted by each character is different. But it was always a part of me. So I've many times said I'm not really a writer. I'm just a thief.
Stealing from your past.
That's right. I mean, with Daddy's Dying, when I wrote Daddy's Dying, I was 28 years old when it opened. The play opened, and it opened in a 64-seat house in Hollywood. I never thought, my family, except for my mom, nobody goes to theater. I never thought that they would know about it. So I just stole my mother's family when my grandpa was dying, and my pawpaw. And boy, when that movie came out, my Aunt Rita didn't speak to me for 7 years.
So you really ruffled feathers.
Oh.
It was obvious who was who.
Yes, and they were like all excited. I've got this movie coming out, and I didn't tell them what it was about. I was like, how do you tell them? Oh,
the good news is it's about you guys, and the bad news is it's about you guys.
But it all worked out,
So, you maintained a straight lifestyle and married and had kids. But when did you actually like going through that? You must have been terribly conflicted.
Very, yeah. There's a lot of pray the gay away. That
Right.
was taught. I mean, you probably heard that in those pews yourself. Not that you had to deal with that. But it was a part of me, my struggle. And so one day, I'm in therapy, and I had met somebody online that it wasn't a full-on affair, but there was an emotional affair going on. And I had to confess to my therapist, I think I'm bi. That's how you start. I think I'm bi. Finally, about 6 months later, after the marriage fell apart, and she has a Dr. Sandra Baca, I love her. She said, now you keep calling yourself bi, but how many women have you been with since you decided that it was okay to be with men? And I go, okay, I'm gay.
Just the one, and I said bye.
Yeah. So it was
Bring it down to brass tacks.
It was not easy. It was really not easy.
You mentioned in church, you told your brother that you were always kind of hiding something. Did you know what you were hiding, or did you just feel different?
No, I knew what I was hiding.
Yeah.
I knew I was attracted to that summer missionary Mike. I knew I was attracted to, this
the new
guy,
Pope.
Mildly.
The thing about, I think you would agree with this, I don't know. But the thing that I always found about, I grew up kind of immersed in Southern Baptistness, but it's a very intolerant church.
Yeah.
I think, famously, a former president of the Southern Baptist Association said, God doesn't hear the prayers of Jews. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's just an incredibly, it's kind of our way or the highway.
Right.
And so no matter how you might be different,
Any difference,
you just
there's no there's this whole philosophy of Christianity. We love, we accept, but no, that is not the case. And I remember when we first did Southern Baptist Sissies, after it ran in L.A., we moved it to Dallas, Texas, and it's in the heat of summer, just blazing hot. And we thought, nobody's going to come to see this play. And then the Baptists got mad. They got mad because we had this poster with this very hot man in a Speedo on the cross. On the cross. And they were like, you took our cross and you desecrated it. And I was like, well, it's my cross too. And this is what it means to me. It means the persecution of the LGBTQ community. And so they wouldn't run our ads in the Dallas Morning News, but what happened was they then ran an article in the religion section about the conflict of this poster. And then Channel 5 there interviewed me on the set. It was this wonderfully warm set of a church, and I'm sitting there in a pew.
Kind of like this, right?
Yeah,
the bar we're in.
Like
This is a house of worship for some.
House of
Well,
worship.
that's sort of my sanctuary these days. And so I remember this wonderful reporter asked me, she said, what's the difference between your message in this play and the message that you heard in these pews growing up? And I said, well, the difference is exactly what's being spewed against this play. It's all about hatred, and this play talks about love and acceptance and understanding for everybody. That interview aired, and we sold out every ticket.
I bet.
Every ticket before we opened, and they were threatening to protest. And I was excited.
Bring it on.
I think absolutely a religious protest. Like when they get mad about movies, everybody goes to see the movie.
yeah,
They're like,
Absolutely.
oh,
I
the
married-
Baptists don't like this. We should go see it.
Yeah, that's why Married with Children became a hit, because they had an uproar over it. So anyway, Leslie Jordan and I arrive at the theater like opening night, and there's one pitiful protester there with just a sign that says sodomites are going to hell or something like that. And I said, Leslie, I was hoping for more protesters. And he said, oh, honey, Baptists don't protest in the heat.
You just mentioned a reverential name in this valley, Leslie Jordan. What can you tell
dear
us
human
about
being.
that relationship?
It was, it's weird because for a little while I was doing interviews. I said, I can't talk about this because it's too hard. And he was as close to me as any family member has ever been. I mean, he was like my brother of sorts. He was the brother I didn't have growing up who understood everything. I always say Leslie was my mentor in learning to be gay. Dr. Sandra Baca, when I was having a hard time coming out, she said, choose somebody that will celebrate it. And so I called Leslie and I told him the real reason the marriage fell apart, and he said, oh, honey, we are going to have so much fun. And, he took me on a journey, and we went on a journey together, a lot of journey with life and with children. He loved my daughters so much. He was godfather to my oldest daughter. And I always say he never gave her any spiritual advice, but he gave her lots of good presents. And he was just not only an amazing friend, but he elevated my work. It was like you write something, and then this voice of Leslie Jordan and this little body portrays those characters, and they are elevated to another.
He's just bigger than life, wasn't he?
He was an amazing, and the single hardest death I've ever had in my life was Leslie's.
Yeah.
I just wasn't expecting it.
Anything about him that most of us wouldn't know?
I guess I tell this story at his, I hosted his memorial. They had a memorial, a public memorial in Chattanooga. And I told a story about when we first started working together. He was in my very, very first play. When it went Equity, we went to Kansas City together. He had auditioned for me, and I was like, where have you been? And so we just became buddies immediately. And I remember we were there during Christmas. We had rehearsal like on the day before Christmas Eve and the day after Christmas, so we couldn't go anywhere. And we would go to this little diner, and this waitress was waiting on us, and we had gotten to know her, and she was going through a really bad divorce with this awful husband. She was young. And he said, what are you going to do for the kids for Christmas? And she got all teary-eyed, and she said, well, it's not going to be much of a Christmas this year because, he hasn't been supporting us, and I just don't have the money. And so she goes away, and Leslie said, do you still have your per diem? And now, let me explain something. Back then, we were making $350 a week for the play. and maybe $100 extra in per diem, like $20 a day or something.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, let's give her 50 each. So those kids can have some Christmas. And so he wrote her a little note, and we left her $100. And then when we got out to the car, he said, let's watch her. And so we watched her just collapse into the booth.
Wow.
And
That's a great story.
So that's who he was. It was, he gave, and he gave back, and he saw people, and he loved to talk to anybody.
And was he like that as an actor, very giving as another actor on stage?
Well, he was like a giving as long as he got the laughs.
Okay.
I mean, Ann Walker, who played Lavonda, and she was at Southern Baptist, she tells a story about, she said, he would go dig through his purse, and he just stills focus, and she'd go, what are you doing in my monologue? What are you doing that everybody's laughing at my
laugh? Getting the laugh.
That's awesome.
That is phenomenal.
Nothing.
When Sordid Lives debuted, again, you're looking back at 25 years of this. It's become kind of your seminal work. Did you have any inkling that it was going to strike such a chord?
Look, Patrick, we honestly, to tell you the truth, we didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. I had never directed a film. I directed plays, of course. I was very good with actors, but I hired a DP, and he was one of our producing partners. He was one of the reasons, Max Savon, who got the movie made, because he worked at Sony, and we got all this equipment of high def. And he really taught me about the 180 and how to direct. But I knew that if I did it simply with this amazing group of actors, that it would work. And I had the play experience, so I knew where the laughs were, so I knew how to edit it. And we just started flying blind. I mean, we literally were just submitting to every film festival. And you know what's interesting, because we're in the Valley, I remember they invited me, the Palm Springs Film Festival invited me to a fundraiser in LA, and they wanted me to speak about my experience with the Palm Springs Film Festival, since it had been such a big deal here. And I said, my experience with the Palm Springs Film Festival was it was the first film festival that turned us down.
Oh, wow.
They didn't know. They thought we had played the Palm Springs Film Festival.
And they had no idea that they rejected the film.
They rejected it.
Oh, my God.
What happened here in the Valley is that the reason, and this city, this area is the reason that Palm Springs made Sordid Lives a hit. And Marshall, who was the general manager at the Camelot Theaters, he saw it at this fundraiser for the museum. We played it one night only at the Annenberg, and he asked Regent if he could put it in the theater.
Wow.
And
it all started from there.
The word of mouth just started. So all of a sudden we're hearing these rumblings. Oh, it's been running 3 months. Oh, it's been running 6 months. And then at 1 year, they ask us all to come down. So that's when we knew what it was then. But we truly had no idea that this was what was happening and what would happen. We had no idea.
And how did this change your life?
Well, I mean, it gets me a lot of free drinks in Palm Springs.
that is worth its weight in
to be
gold.
on major podcasts like this,
Major podcast.
The number one podcast in Coachella Valley.
In the Coachella Valley, right here.
Absolutely.
No, it has changed my life in that this piece of work that I wrote as sort of an extension of my own coming out experience gave other people some sort of voice as well, and it just continues. I'm shocked that people still, see me on the street and scream out, do you see my pussy now? I mean,
and your answer is usually,
I always go, I am a major playwright, and that's the most famous line I've written.
There it is.
So was there some point in your career where you started looking at the fact that you were on stage with Leslie Jordan and Delta Burke and people like this and thinking, how did I get here?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I have a wonderful friend. He's still my friend. He was our publicist, Ed Barron. And I remember he also kind of didn't know what he was young publicist. And we could afford him, but he was great. And he got us because of Olivia, because of Delta. I mean, Delta had just come off of Designing Women. She was unhireable kind of at the time, you know, with all the bad publicity. And I was her first job back. And Olivia, to grace her talent,
that's just crazy
to do this little tiny film. She had been my friend for many years. Her sister Rona and I were very close. She was in my acting class, and then Beau Bridges had done Daddy's Night. So I was able to gather this cast that I didn't deserve, and then suddenly we're on Good Morning America and we're on the Today Show. And I think that's when I saw Delta doing that interview on either Entertainment Tonight or Good Morning America, I was thinking, wow, this is a different animal than I thought it was. But here's what happens as the Insecure director, and I was, you know, young at the time. I was going, I just hope it's good. I hope that when it comes out, because this was before it came out.
Right, that was the publicity tour leading up to the release.
Yes, and then so you're just hoping, and you know, it didn't get good reviews. It was
really
no. You go to Rotten Tomatoes, it's like my least best. I mean, of all my movies, it's the least best reviewed.
Really,
if that makes sense.
Wow. I mean, it's shocking me, but because you know, my lens of that film is through. I lived in Palm Springs, you know, for the last 23 years. So when people talked about Sordid Lives, it's a legend here.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
96
really,
weeks it ran.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, no, it was.
Yeah.
So did you get to the point of accepting that you were good and that you were worthy of everything that was coming to you?
Well, you know, we all have imposter syndrome. I think we all do. And I after I did Sordid Lives, Olivia and I bonded even more, and she wanted me to write this movie because she had talked to Showtime and for she and her daughter Chloe. And so I wrote a movie called The Wild Girls. And I remember this moment. I was staying at these condominium it's called the Xanadu in the Gold Coast in Australia, and it was the first day of shooting, and I'm jogging to ABBA, and I see Olivia all coming my way, and so we jogged together, and she said, "How are you feeling, mate?" And I said, "I'm just scared that people are going to find out that I'm really not that good."
Wow.
And she said, "I go through it every time I step on stage."
Wow.
And so I thought, oh, and her telling me that, for some reason, gave me permission to be good. And it was because writing was always easy for me. You know, it was an easy thing. It didn't, and you go to Deepak Chopra and the 7 laws of spiritual success, the law of least effort. Like y'all are very good at this. This is easy for you. Well, sometimes that's why you're the #1 podcast in the Valley. You know, because it's easy and it's good.
Well, thank you. I get that. No, but that makes a lot of sense because writing was easy for you and that's what you're good at. But you know, it translates into all of these other things that you've gone on to do. So
yeah.
Well, when you get to the point of feeling comfortable with what you're doing, you're not worrying about all the other stuff like, am I doing good or not?
Right.
You're just doing it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's also, you know, just that whole idea of, well, like when something that you've done creates enough success that you're paying the bills and you're not worried about writing the next check, then all of a sudden, like, okay, well, I'm doing okay at this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know, that's a good feeling.
They're still hiring me, so that, you know, it's, I don't know. It's been a good ride. It's still going, but it's been a good ride. And many times people have asked me, do you have an issue with being identified with Sordid Lives so much? Because I have written a lot of other stuff.
A lot of other stuff, yes.
A lot of other stuff. And I go, no, I don't. I celebrate it. So that's fine.
I mean, I guess some people can get very resentful. Like they do many things, but you get known for that one particular thing, and maybe you get a little resentful of it. You know, I think some big stars like Sean Connery was a little resentful of only being known as James Bond for a while, but then he reconciled and realized it's a good thing. But I guess it's easy to do. But when you look back, as you say, you've written so many different things. Put Sordid Lives aside, is Southern Baptist Sissies one of your favorites?
It is my favorite.
It is your favorite.
It's my favorite of everything. But
Yeah.
I love Sordid Lives.
Because of the personal story.
It was so personal to me, and it was so healing for me. Because, when I wrote that play, I wrote it with resistance. I'd had back then, my brother and I did not have such a great relationship, and there was some issues over me and being gay and, the not understanding. And Matthew Shepard was murdered, and I had a conversation with him about how I felt that there was a possibility, because I'd seen this article in Time magazine where they were interviewing one of the girlfriends, and on the wall was a picture of Jesus.
Ugh.
And that's why Southern Baptist Sissies was written, because I saw that picture and I thought, I wonder if they learned to hate in pews. I wonder if that's why. So I was having this conversation with my brother, and he said that line that I hate to this day, because it said a lot, well, we don't hate the sinner, we hate the sin. And I'm like, but I don't think that a certain age people can differentiate.
And I don't think Jesus said that.
No, and Jesus never said anything about homosexuality. Come on, he hung out with all those disciples. There was
12 guys that never mentioned a girlfriend for one of them.
No, I mean...
Good point.
I'm no scholar on that. I don't. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe Peter had a chick on the side. I don't know.
But Thaddeus was the effeminate one. That's what they said. So anyway, it doesn't matter. But that started the journey for me. And I started writing, just a monologue about, when I was a kid, I had a crush on Jesus.
And did it just start to kind of come out?
Yeah.
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 We are going to take a quick break to recognize our presenting sponsor, the McCallum Theater. They make all of this possible.
Yes.
They're incredibly generous to us, but they're incredibly generous to the Valley and all of the wonderful things that they provide, including their incredible education department. So we want to pause and acknowledge the McCallum Theater and McCallumtheater.org.
At the McCallum Theater, we believe in placing arts at the heart of learning. Since '97, our education department has inspired nearly 1 million students and community members through dynamic performances and immersive arts education programs. From the Palm Desert Choreography Festival to our Open Call Talent Project, we provide powerful platforms for emerging artists. Experience how the arts contribute to personal growth and enlightened citizenship. Your entertainment, your theater, the McCallum Theater. Learn more at mccallumtheater.org.
All right, we are back. Thanks again to the McCallum Theater. We are here with Del Shores, and we're just diving into... We jump right into Sordid Lives, but now we've pivoted to Southern Baptist Sissies, and we were just getting into kind of your writing process. Like, you just... it just started spilling out of you.
Yeah, it's self-taught in a way, but it's also, I now have the privilege of mentoring and teaching. I teach at Northwestern State University every year as a guest artist, and I always tell my students, just read plays. If you're going to write plays, read plays. And that's what I have to go back to my mom, who was that drama teacher, and she used to pay my brother and myself $1 to either read a play or a book. Every one that we read, she would give us $1 until she stopped, because I kept reading so many that she was going broke.
Did she care what you read?
No, she had we had this one area in our house that was kind of a hallway, and she just filled it with books. And so that was my education, and she always, every year, she directed the plays in high school, and she would get this big stack of Samuel French playbooks, and she would say, "You want to read them with me?" And I would just devour them in the summer. And one of my proudest moments with her was taking her to the bookstore, the Samuel French bookstore, and showing her my plays on the shelf.
Wow.
How did she react?
She was very proud. Yeah. My mother was really, really proud of it. Not so much the movies and the television as much as the plays, because she...
Well, that was her world.
That was her
She
world.
was a theater person.
And a theater director. So
And so you learn by just absorbing these plays.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, I went to Baylor and majored in journalism and Spanish. Yeah.
Have you ever written a play in Spanish?
No, I've written some words. A few choice words.
You told us a really funny story before we started taping. And you were talking about an experience you had with a woman here in town. But the line that you used, you said, and if she had a Southern accent, she could be a character in one of my plays.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so ingrained in you. I mean, that is, I mean, that's the well source for what you do, right?
Yeah.
That's that Southern experience.
Yes.
And I mean, everybody comes from that cast of characters that you grew up around.
Yeah. It's, I call it my dirt. You know, that's why back to Leslie, people would always say, why did you connect with him? And I said, because we came from the same dirt. You know, we grew up in the Southern Baptist Church. We just, you know, with a secret of being gay. And, yeah.
You brought a lot of your stuff into all that early writing, but some of the later writing you did, like Queer as Folk, how did your life come into that?
Well, my gay life came into that because I had, you know, when I wrote Southern Baptist Sissies, Ron and Dan, who created Ron Cowan and Dan Lippman created Queer as Folk, and I had back to that Olivia Newton-John picture, Swoosie Kurtz was in it, and Swoosie was in their series Sisters.
Yes.
When she got back to the States after we filmed, she told them, you have to go see Del Shore's Southern Baptist Sissies because you need to hire him on your show. And they came on Friday and they hired me on Monday.
Wow.
I met with them and they hired me in the room, and they said something that day. They said, we like in our show for you to take your life, share it in the writer's room, and then let's see what characters it fits. And, you know, we did that so many times. I mean, you know, we filmed in Toronto, and there was a doctor up there, Dr. Solish, who would give me shots in my face to make me look young, and so we stole all of that. I would come to the writer's room just like black and blue, and they'd go, Del, you have to stop. But
the Botox addiction.
We took that and gave it to Ted because he was feeling insecure. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me to write on Queer as Folk. I loved it so much.
How long did you do that?
I did it for 3 years. Wow. I did the last 3 seasons.
So some pretty iconic stuff that you've been involved with.
I've been lucky.
You got to be pretty proud of that.
I am. I'm proud of my body of work and continuing. I'm continuing more in the theater these days. I just directed a play off Broadway written by a wonderful writer named Jiggs Burgess, and he was the winner of, I have a foundation now, the Del Shores Foundation, and he was our very first winner, our playwright winner. This was his second play. So we give opportunity to LGBTQ playwrights and screenwriters and short film writers.
Tell me how the foundation came about.
You know, wonderful, wonderful man named Stuart Bell, who's one of my closest friends. He actually lives here in Palm Springs now. He's the one who got me to move down here. He said, come join us in the land of delusion. We pretend that all of this is not happening. All of this in the world is not.
It is like you could just tear the curtain aside and go,
Just come to the little bar and pretend that this is not happening in our world.
It is a bubble. We live in a bubble. It's a pretty good bubble.
But I had mentored one of my close friends, Matt Hayes, who had written a wonderful little short film, and I was going, you need to do this and this, and then we raised the money, and I helped him make it, and Stuart was wonderfully generous in helping with financially, and he came to Emerson Collins, who has been my producing partner since 2006 now, and he said, why don't we create a foundation where you can do this for other people, where you can really help LGBTQ storytellers, and I was like, oh no, it's too hard. This is too much work. And then Emerson had a brainstorm of if we had a contest every year and you could submit your scripts, and if you've never been produced, you could never be produced in playwriting or screenwriting or short films. And then we had one winner, and then we give opportunity to them. So we've had one of our short films was played the festival circuit last year, and all of our plays have been produced. And I have really big news, actually. This is the first time I've been able to talk about it because it just happened. The winner of Emma, who just won, Scolage is her last name. She just won our third year with a play called Cockroaches, is going to premiere at the Revolution Theater.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
When does that come out?
It's going to be in 2026.
Yeah. All right.
So in their season.
RevolutionStageCompany.com is the website when it comes out. It's
so
called
watch
Cockroaches.
that. It's the ink is not even dry. I probably shouldn't even be saying it, but I'm going to say it.
Oh,
Well, our
well,
listener-
by the time we produce this thing, I mean, it takes us months to get one of these things out.
And so our listener will have forgotten about it by then.
No,
so.
they'll be ready to go. It'll be almost on stage.
It's all good.
So
I mean,
what directing in front of the camera, behind the camera? What do you like to do the most? If you had to pick one,
I love this question, and I do have an answer for it.
Thank God.
If I could pick one thing of the hats that I've worn, I would be directing one of my own plays. It's my favorite thing to do because it's the last step in the process for me now as a writer is to direct the piece. I've directed everything I've written since Sordid Lives.
have you directed yourself?
I've not. No, that I don't do. When like Emerson Collins directs all of my one-man shows.
Okay.
When I stand in, I need that other eye. I really do, and I can't even direct. I don't even understand how Eastwood and and Kevin Costner, these great movie stars. I'm not sure how they can direct themselves on film. It's not in my.
Tell us about the one-man shows.
I've had a great time standing on stage and talking shit. And
talk about how that started.
Well, it started out of kind of being broke. When
The source of all great ideas.
Yes.
Or many.
I have to go in a minute. I've got a second job who started at 5 o'clock.
It's like, got that dishwashing job over.
Oh God, I hope I still have
at
it.
Willie's down the street.
Oh, if it was Willie's, that'd
Yeah.
be pretty cool. Unfortunately, it's the Denny's on Washington.
Oh
but-
God.
It's America's Diner. There's nothing wrong with that.
Look, the short story is that when Sordid Lives, the series, was a hit on Logo, and the producer decided not to pay us our residuals and stalled the second season, and I was in legal hell for a couple of years with my hands tied. I could not write my own series. I could not write for any other series. I had no source of income.
Wow.
And so my ex-husband, I said I wasn't going to talk about him, but he did do something great. He said, you sit around the dining table and you tell great stories. Why don't you write one? And let's go. And you've got this fan base everywhere. And that's what we did. And I started telling stories on stage. And I had the great mentor, too, actually, Caroline Ray, who really helped me.
And she's such a funny woman.
Well, she saw my one-man show in New York, and she said, why don't you come open with me and do stand-up? I can help you mine this material that you have. And she taught me. And then I just watched Leslie for years just sit with a mic and tell stories. And so one of the best nights of my life, we did 6 shows, was me, Leslie, Caroline Ray, and Rue McClanahan.
Oh, my God.
Playing comics in New York. Wow. So that sort of evolved, and I started doing, I did over 500 shows just talking shit. And then I wrote a play called 6 Characters in Search of a Play. And what I did is I took people like Paula that I told you about,
yes.
Anybody that I felt like was circling the wagon that I haven't told you about yet, and I chose 6. And I wrote this play, and, it was... Emerson directed it. We filmed it.
Did you have any projects that you were working on and they just never got out there?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've had the ones that got away.
Yeah.
Yeah. several.
Any that you're going to try to bring back?
There's a couple that I feel so passionate about. Emerson and I actually wrote a pilot and series a few years ago during COVID that we sold, and loved it so much. It's called Mildred, and that's one. And then I wrote a screenplay years ago with Leslie called When Fleta Goes Marching In. And
It's a funny title.
It is. And it's truly the movie. And Bette Midler was attached to it for a while. Cher wanted to do it for a while. It came close. Yeah. Never got made. So I wouldn't mind revisiting that.
Who would you attach to it now if you could? Who's your dream get?
Maybe Lily Tomlin, or always wanted to work with Sissy Spacek.
Yeah, Lily's going to be here in 6 months.
Yes, she is.
I've met them both. I mean, Sissy's more of a friend than Lily. I've met Lily through Leslie, but Sissy's husband directed my first movie. So, there's...
I interviewed Sissy Spacek 30 plus years ago. She was the Grand Marshal of the Charlottesville, Virginia Film Festival.
Is that right?
Yes.
She's
riding the lead car, waving to everybody.
It was weird that they called it the Grand Marshal. Yeah. It was an odd title for a film festival, but she was delightful. She was really terrific.
She's down to earth.
Yeah, she was super down to earth.
Yeah, I love her.
Is there anybody that you haven't worked with yet that you just have a burning desire?
Sissy's number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to work with Whoopi finally, so that was kind of amazing. But yeah, there's a good list. I mean, she got a little bit politically weird for me, but I adore Susan Sarandon and her work and her body of work.
And her body?
Well, back in Bull Durham.
Yes.
I mean, you're a straight man. That was, how sexy was she in Bull Durham?
She is pretty sexy.
The bombshell.
But,
of course, Kevin Costner was pretty sexy in it, too. So.
And Timothy
And
Robbins.
Tim Robbins.
Yeah, Tim Robbins was great.
I think he was really supposed to be the heartthrob.
The manager of the baseball team, I still think about him. Anyway.
But,
do we need to pause a moment? You need a cigarette?
Yeah, I need a minute.
But, honestly,
I'm verklempt.
I always go to females because actresses. Jean Smart lately, just doing such brilliant work. I really feel like, I want to make a prediction right now. Jean Smart has won 14 Emmys. After Hacks is over, she's going to get the role that wins her an Oscar. I feel that Jean Smart is one of our greatest actresses.
She is so good in that show.
Oh my!
She's unbelievable in that show.
I love it so much.
Super lucky. I was actually in a Jean Smart movie. Jean Smart did a film right here in Palm Springs with William Shatner and Christopher Lloyd called Senior Moment. And Jean Smart played the romantic interest of William Shatner.
Well, I was in Mommy and Me with Jean Smart with my daughter Rebecca 35 years ago.
Oh my goodness!
She and her husband. I've been very, very fortunate to work with some amazing people, but I'm a fan of so many more.
Do people keep throwing projects at you?
Not as much as I wish they would. They throw projects at me, but they never have the money to make them.
There's no cash behind it.
Here's something great. You should do this.
Yeah, find the funds.
They're like the projects that I get offered are like, and can you raise the money?
Right.
And
is that really? I mean, is that the single hardest job of putting together any of these projects? Is finding the cash?
It is a very difficult thing to do. And I will not do it for anybody but my own work.
Right.
I'm that selfish.
Now, how much writing do you still get to do?
You know what? I don't. I used to write daily, and I don't write daily anymore. I write when I have something to say, and I don't search for things to say. I let things come to me. I have a new play that opens in Birmingham in February called The Recipe Box, and that was one of those things where I'm down teaching in Natchitoches, Louisiana, and I observed something and it resonated with me, and a play came out of it. So that's how I write these days.
What's your process? Do you have a specific place that you sit?
I do.
Yeah?
I sit mainly on the sofa with a legal pad and a pencil.
And you've
you
always written like
handwrite it?
that.
Yeah. Wow. I write longhand. I feel like that is something I don't have to think about. I have to worry about, the keys on I do the rewriting on the computer.
Okay.
But I have a huge rewriting. Rewriting is much more of my career than writing.
Really?
Yeah, I write the first draft and then I just keep working and working and working.
Anything that you finished the first time and thought, it's perfect?
No.
No.
Scenes, yes. Like the brother boy scene in Sordid Lives, I wrote that in about 48 hours. I called Leslie and I read it from start to finish. He ad-libbed a couple of things as I was reading it, and I added that, and it pretty much stayed the same.
Ever had any major disagreements with an actor on the way they were doing something and the way you wanted it done?
Yes.
Yeah? Something you can share?
Sure,
Yeah.
because he's dead now. Not Leslie. Leslie and I always say one of the reasons that Leslie and I were so great together is he heard everything the way I heard it and beyond. I mean, when I wrote okay in Sordid Lives, he said, okay. That was him. But there was an actor, and I love and adored him. His name was Glenn Shaddix. You'll remember him. He was in Beetlejuice. He was sort of the interior designer, the big queen.
The big guy.
Yeah. And Leslie actually introduced me to him, and Leslie got a movie and left Sissies for a while, and Glenn stepped in. And as a director, I believe in line readings. If you're not getting the line the way I hear it, I'm going to tell you how to say it. And Glenn had a very different theory about that. And so I started to give him a line reading, and he said, no. I do not take line readings. And I said, wow. Well, if you work for me, you will.
and you do work for me.
And so I've always taught my actors when I teach acting, I say, you can have your philosophy, you can have your way of working. I do sense memory, I do whatever, substitution. You can do whatever you want. But if a director tells you to do something else, you are working for them. And you need to figure out in your craft, in your process, how to adapt to their style as well. And I'm not without opinions.
There's a shock. It comes as a great shock to all of us.
Well, it kind of seems like if you've written it and you're directing it, maybe your opinion counts.
I think I know what I want. Yeah, right?
Yeah. And your track record of success would lead one to believe, let's go with his idea. Yeah. I think we're going to go with that.
But I love a good actor. Beau Bridges I've worked with Beau 3 times actually. People know about 2, but I worked on a television show called Maximum Bob. He actually got me that gig. But anyway, Beau is very method. I mean, he writes down, what kind of watch GW would wear.
Wow.
What the childhood experience with GW with. When did he meet Nolita? And my theory about acting as a director is I don't care how you get there. I just want you to get there. And so Beau has this meeting with me and his co-star. He has this legal pad with all these things written down. We were doing Sordid Lives, and so it's me and Delta Burke and Beau Bridges, and he's going in GW, met Nolita in 8th grade. She was in 8th grade, and he was a sophomore in high school, and then blah, blah, and he's just going on and on, all this detail. And Delta's just like, well, I didn't think about that. And so at the end, he goes, Del, does that coincide with all of your thoughts on GW? And I go, yeah, Beau, that all works really well for me.
But that has to feel pretty good as a director to understand how lined up they are with your vision.
And how thorough he was.
Yeah.
And
he gave it more than you, I think,
That's
I've
right.
ever
Oh.
put into that.
Yeah, I didn't, he knew when the first time he jacked off. I mean, he was like so detailed. And then he said, Delta, does that conflict with anything that you've done with your work? And she said, oh, Bo, honey, I just say the lines and hope for the best.
That's fantastic. So
But
good.
boy, her best was great.
Oh man, I had a big major crush on her for years.
Yeah.
Just
You
thought
also
I
had a
did.
major crush on the manager from Bull Durham.
Oh, I
I'm getting
did.
a lot
I
of
like
mixed
that guy.
messages from you, Randy.
Delta's still my buddy. We still
Yeah.
talk. I probably should call her on the way out of here. She's living in Florida now. She's a really sweet, beautiful
Does she
soul.
still work?
She chooses not to. I mean, her husband, Gerald McRaney, Mac, we call him, he works a lot. But
He's always been one of my favorite. I feel like what you see on the screen is kind of who he is.
he's very much that.
I mean, he's one of those, like, you see people, you think, man, I'd like to grab a beer with that guy.
Yeah.
He strikes me as that kind of guy.
He's one of my favorite Republicans.
Both of them.
Yeah, Delta's a Republican, but I don't think she keeps up that much,
She's not that dialed into where they are right now.
Probably not. Yeah.
I adore her.
So what's coming up next?
Well, you're moving to Palm Springs.
Big move. My grandson is coming in a few weeks.
That's so exciting.
And then
now, where is your grandson? Where are your kids?
My daughter Caroline lives in San Francisco. My daughter Rebecca lives in L.A. And so Rebecca and I are getting in the car and driving up there and staying for a week for the birth of the child. And then I have the Recipe Box, my new play, opening in February in Birmingham. It's going to probably have a Tri-City premiere, and we're working out the details of the other two cities. And I do have a project I'm working on that I can't talk about quite yet, but it's going to be very exciting for those.
Does it involve podcast hosts?
Yeah, it does. It's
thank God.
It's a straight guy that's a podcast host, and the other one who had a crush on Delta Burke, but he
But
also
also
had
a
a crush
baseball
on
fan.
Tim Robbins. And
There's a lot you can do with that character.
And somehow they fall in love with the control guy. It's a whole threesome. It's very detailed.
I'm going to have to talk about the casting. Randy asks all these questions because he continues to improve his craft as a thespian. He's taken acting. Do you know Terry Ray?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yes.
So he's been taking acting with Terry, and he and Randy are going to do an improv class.
Oh,
together.
I love that.
Yeah, that class is going to be in trouble.
I love that.
I suspect we'll be thrown out by week 3.
Well,
I'm giving us 3 weeks.
When y'all get to the showcase level, please invite me, and I'll come and judge you.
Oh, dear God.
I feel judged already.
I feel pretty judged. No, the way he said that.
The way he said
It's
it.
like, I mean, celebrate your work.
Oh, yes.
How can people support the foundation?
Just go to delshoresfoundation.org, and you can see what we do and celebrate with us. And we appreciate. I always say, we're a family. The Del Shores Foundation is a family. We have so much support here in the Valley. Every year we have these house parties, and Melissa Morgan hosted it with John Monahan last year, and we just have beautiful people here who support our work. So
You've got an amazing body of work. So first of all, congratulations
I thought he
on
was
all
going
of
to say
that.
body.
I did
Yeah,
too.
well,
I was really nervous. I was worried where that sentence was going.
Sorry, I'm still thinking about Delta Burke, but when I'm talking about the manager, I'll get back
But
to you.
thank you, Randy. I appreciate it. No, seriously, thank you very much. I many times make fun of instead of accept a compliment, and I thank you for that.
Well, it's funny you say that. We had a guest on recently, Dave Karger, but the classic movie, Turner's classic movie, and he was telling a story about what people did with their Oscar statues, and he mentioned that Dustin Hoffman didn't feel comfortable putting his out, didn't like showing it to people, and had to go through years of therapy before he felt comfortable doing that. Did any of that pertain to you as you were growing up, that you didn't feel comfortable with the success?
Yeah, I think back to the imposter syndrome, because I started where I met Rona Newton-John. Actually, Olivia's sister was in Joan Darling's acting class, and there were such ridiculously talented people in that class. And there were some people that were already famous. Ann Archer was in that class. George Gaines was in that class. I remember one session, Steven Spielberg came into the class.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he just wanted to know how to direct actors better, so he just sat there and watched. But there were so many actors that I could name their names right now, and I don't know what happened to them. And you would go, wow, they're going to make it. They're going to be so huge. And so your success is different than maybe you even thought it would be, or maybe you thought it would be bigger at some point, but it wasn't, or whatever. I mean, it's all a part of the journey. And I know I'm answering this in a weird way, but the way I was able to accept, and that's why I paused when you and I wanted to accept that compliment instead of like make a joke about it, is I went to an acting class probably a couple of years, maybe more. My friend Karen Austin, who's a great actress, she was on the first season of Night Court and did a lot of great work. And I remember I had gotten a green light on my movie Blues for Willowdene that was with Beth Grant and Octavia Spencer, Debbie Holliday, and David Steen.
Yeah.
And they asked for this part of the class, what were your blessings this week? And she said, I wasn't a part of the class. And she said, Del, come up and tell them, I know that something happened. And I said, oh, because so I did. And then I remember everybody started applauding, and I did this. And she said, oh, that's not allowed here, because you put a wall up. You're taking away the gift that they're giving you. You're going, I don't want your gift.
Wow.
So to accept the compliment and to go, okay, thank you.
Do you still struggle with that?
I do. I think we all do.
It's a hard thing.
Well, you grew up in the church. We were taught humility.
Yes.
You know, be humble. Don't be that person with a lot of pride. But so yeah, it's part of learning.
Yeah.
Always learning and growing.
I heard Jason Bateman say recently, as a director, that he tells his actors 3 things on the first day. Be on time, know your lines, and don't be a dick. Is there anything that you say to your people on the first day of a shooting as to how you want things to go?
I tell my actors very much some of that same. I say, be prepared. If you think you're prepared, be over-prepared. Because when all of these elements come in, when you have the boom, when you have the camera coming, it's not just me and you talking anymore. And you think about these, we were talking about Jean Smart, all the brilliant work that she does. Well, think about that with all of these people around her. And you have to be so prepared. And I agree with Jason Bateman. I don't work with assholes anymore. Yeah. I've worked with a lot of assholes in my career. And if I have any inkling that someone is an asshole, I'm not going to work with them.
Okay, dish the dirt before we go. Who is this? Give us some names of your people you won't work with anymore.
Oh,
I love this stuff.
I would never. Judge Reinhold, Thomas Hayden Church was not exactly nice.
He seems like he could be a little
well, why does it?
Difficult.
You know, you think about people, like you think about Judge, you think about, I mean, Tommy. I love Tommy. I loved it. We worked on Ned and Stacy together, but he wasn't kind to Deborah Messing. He was awful to her.
Really?
And I look at those people who are rude, who are nasty to those people that they perceived. I don't think of people as underlings. Yeah. I don't think of the assistant costumer who's giving you a robe or whatever, that you have to, like Judge had thought that he could yell at people. Or the DP. I worked with him twice, and it was 2 times too many. He was mean to Sandy Sissel, the DP on Dad the Angel in me. And I remember he came up to me at the end of that shoot, and he said, probably, I'm saying things I probably shouldn't, but I don't give a fuck at this point in my life. He said, I hope we can work together again. And I said, Judge, I would rather work the drive-through window at El Pollo Loco asking people if they want corn or flour tortillas than to work with you again, because you are a horrible human being to other people. And then later on, he sent me an apology. He said that he had gotten some help and he had struggled with some mental stuff, and he sent me an apology. But there are people who treat it. For me, it's like when you go out to dinner with someone and someone's rude with the waiter.
Yeah.
That's a dick.
Right. You learn a lot about people in the way that they treat other people.
That's right.
Don't pay attention to how I treat Randy, but I try to treat everybody else really nicely. So,
but it's a good theory. Jason Bateman was right.
Yeah, I like that.
Del, thank you first of all, I love brutal honesty, and it makes for a great podcast. You're terrific. You tell great stories, and this has been a delight.
It really has.
When this next project that I know that you couldn't talk about, when that comes to fruition, will you come back?
I will come and announce it.
All right.
Because people here are going to be very excited about it.
Can't wait.
All right.
That's terrific. We're excited that you're going to be a resident here.
Yes,
Me
definitely.
too.
Palm Springs feels like we have a little bit of ownership of you.
That's right.
Because of the
Don't do anything without asking first.
By the way, I'm filming an episode of House Hunter this weekend.
Seriously?
Yeah, with my pursuit of finding the right place.
My wife is going to love that.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
So,
you're a terrific guest. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Randy,
for having
you're
me.
terrific.
This was a great show. We got to talk about some important things.
To bring in guests that are producing work that may be able to hire you.
Hey, whatever happens, I am part of the #1 podcast in the Coachella Valley.
There we go.
Absolutely. And so is John McMullen, our producer, and so are you, all of our listeners. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Our thanks to Skip Page. Our thanks to the McCallum Theaters, our presenting sponsor. Once again, thanks to Del Shores, a phenomenal guest. And thank you for listening to Big Conversations, Little Bar. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Meet your neighbors, fascinating and grand. Each conversation, a wave on the sand. Raise your glass and join the ride, where stories and dreams fully collide. At Big Conversations, Little Bar, brought to you by McCallum, our guiding star. From movie, stage, and TV's delight, join us for a captivating morning, noon, or night. So gather round at Skip's Little Bar, where stories travel from near and far. Big conversations where they unfold, with Patrick and Randy, tales retold.